Thank you. To formally get us going, let me also provide us this. I knew I should have zoomed in. I'll get the video zoomed in next time because it's funny how they fake prank him. For some reason, Evan Fournier is not either in on the prank or just didn't want to actually prank Wemby, which is a different thing. Obviously it's a common thing in baseball. They shun you when you hit your home run. This is just the French team hazing him a little bit. But it's honestly, I'm not gonna lie, it's really cute at the end.
They just wanted him to run out by himself for the introductions, or
yeah, they were just goofing him,
Okay.
and then but you don't see it in that clip well because it wasn't zoomed in. But at the end, Wemby just looks at him and gives him like a fucking TV sitcom, like guys. It was really funny. I'm not gonna lie. So hopefully someone zooms in on that and gets it better. Either way, we've got a lot to talk about. A lot, like a fucking lot. But I've done a very, very good job of taking two of the biggest days of the off season.
It's exhausting.
And squeezing them in. This year it wasn't as bad because the free agency stuff that we'll get to, but it's still a lot when it comes together, right? Like it's still two very big moments happening within a week span. Essentially, you're flipping the NBA in a complete, 180 at times, in this week of the season. And this is how the league's year is designed. It's designed to end the finals, turn around into the draft, turn around into free agency, right?
Yeah, and if you're a fan of parody and you don't like dynasties, you should be applauding this and hoping it continues like this year after year.
There are some things that we're interested to see. So before we get into breaking down all of what's happened, I just want to start by mentioning two subjects that are the most important, right? They both involve the draft and free agency, the two things I just mentioned. Number one, this is the first year of draft day 2. Couple of interesting things I thought about. No matter what you do with this broadcast, isn't Woj and Shams cucking it online kind of ruining the live product of it anyway? And hasn't that always been a thing? And even when you told them to stop doing it, they still just did it in a goofier way.
Pretty much since Twitter took off, every draft has been, you can either look on Twitter and it'll tell you immediately, or you can wait for them to announce it on TV.
Dog, it'll be like 2 or 3 picks behind by the time it gets towards the teens. It's usually not that bad at the beginning. Like it's still a couple minutes ahead, but once they get into the teens, it just becomes goofy. So ultimately, that's always going to be the draft's biggest enemy, I think, of viewing is the fact that Twitter basically kind of makes it, for just a niche audience to watch, in my opinion. It was a very calm first round as far as trades go. It's not like we didn't have any. There's some pretty big ones we'll get to, obviously, but there, I think, is the new CBA. Was it the extra day? Was it the quality of this draft? Was it a coincidence? I'm not sure. But usually it's kind of a hectic day with trades, whether it be draft pick trades, player trades. But most of the player trades were done either before the draft or right at the start of the second day or the following it. So I thought that was interesting. And then the one massive win, for sure here, Bob Myers noted this on the second day. The teams now have 4 minutes between second round draft picks, where they only had 2 in previous years. So even if the rest of it's useless and stupid, it was very, very useful for the teams to get 4 minutes because now they can do trades. Now they can make things happen.
How upset was Adam when he found out that the first year he was going to do a day 2, it was going to go up against Trump v. Biden debate number 1 / maybe the only debate, we'll see.
Well, it kind of didn't. It kind of didn't because for some reason
they
started
it.
day
That's
2
why
early,
they had
right?
to. Yeah.
Did they change it last minute?
I would think so. I mean, the debate's been announced for a while, but they weren't going to move the whole draft, so it was just easier to get time for day 2. I assume it's supposed to be prime time both nights.
I would guess so, and we'll see what it is in the future.
But obviously they weren't going to do that with the presidential debate. So.
But yes, and it probably would have been over too because the president's debate ended up starting a little late too, I think. So either way, it was not something Adam probably expected. But luckily, he had an ace in the hole for day 2.
Yeah, that's true.
Boy, did he!
You will never have more hype for day 2 than for the first one.
Probably not. So that was the way I looked at draft day 2. So any other draft notes you guys thought were relevant, necessarily interesting?
I didn't actually get a chance to watch the draft, unfortunately. I had to keep up on the ESPN app.
Yeah, exactly, and that's not uncommon for a lot of leagues. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I was a little surprised that the Spurs didn't try to package their 2
We'll save the
Early
player
pick.
stuff. I meant
Okay.
more of the broadcast stuff. Yeah,
No,
we'll
I
save that for the.
I don't think I even saw a highlight of a single second of the draft.
There was some funny stuff. Like they announced Dalton Connect, one of the white shooter kids, and they showed the kid from France who's clearly not him.
Oh, okay.
Oh, love that.
That was funny.
We saw some of that at the Ranger
Um,
game last night, where they had the wrong picture for the name of the guy that was supposed to be batting, and then oddly enough, after I posted about it online, stopped happening the rest of the game.
Was it one of our guys?
It was our whole team. There was something wrong with the transition.
Oh, they had
the transition
fucked up
from batter
there.
to batter. So you would get it would say right field 53, but it'd be a picture of Josh Smith or whatever.
Ah,
I see. Okay, well, fair enough. So yeah,
Ooh.
that's
Dang, I forgot to mention the NHL did their draft within the last week too, and they did it at the Sphere, and that looked
a good
cool
time,
as hell. But
It
that's all
looked
I had to
cool.
say about that.
there was also some funny parts, like the
That
angle that you sent where it was just looking straight up from the bottom.
With the full
Did you
draft
see
board, and then someone edited it in to make it the Doug Dimmadome guy from
Oh.
Fairly Odd Parents.
I didn't see
'cause,
that, but
he
that
wears
makes
the
sense.
tall hat.
The one that cracked me up. Did you see the goalie cam?
No, did they put goalie cam on in the Sphere?
The
That
goalie
sounds like
cam
that's
was
nausea-inducing.
it was really intense, bro. Yeah, for some reason they did that, and it was an interesting shot. I don't know what the contract looks like. So these two leagues compete essentially for the same times, same week essentially for the drafts.
I mean, they're full
So I don't-
seasons. The NBA really had an opportunity to separate themselves, but the problem is they didn't need to separate themselves during the COVID scheduling.
Yeah, no,
I think
no,
if
they did
I think
that.
if hockey had done theirs differently, they might have kept it, but they didn't.
Maybe we always want to keep the winter sport. I think too. Like I don't think they're competing markets enough,
They're indoor sports.
but that's why they're winter sports.
yeah.
I mean, seriously, that's why they're winter sports.
Football is an indoor
Um,
sport. Baseball is mostly an indoor sport now.
But yeah, nowadays football and all these,
Yeah.
it does get a little weird.
I just want to
But
pace
anyway,
them out to where we don't only there are. Yeah, it would make it easier for me to follow all four of them if those two split up a little bit.
Was it bold?
bit, yeah.
Was it sort of gimmicky? Yes. But do I applaud the NHL for what they did? I do. And would I love to see the NBA draft there? Obviously.
It
I don't
will
think
be
it'll happen.
whatever year that team's introduced.
Yeah, maybe.
It will be. It'll have to be.
They should just go ahead and do it this next year. Unless they
Honestly,
already
though,
have
I'm
next
starting to
year.
lose faith that they're even going to get a Vegas team, and it might take LeBron being the person who pushes it forward because I am
just
starting
thought
to
that's,
get the
I
feeling
thought
like
that's just
they're-
what everyone was waiting on.
No, I think that there is a sense that the league is a little like since they already have Vegas and they already have the Vegas market worked out for summer, that perhaps
They're
Mexico
reticent to
City
make a
should
pro
be
team there,
be
yeah.
the other team that they force into the. But we'll see. That's getting ahead of ourselves by many years probably. Free agency. Free agency usually comes about 5 or 6 o'clock, depending on what coast you're on. Probably as late as like 8 or probably as early as like 4 or so on the west. But usually what happens is the period starts. We get flooded with notes. We just get signing, right? Technically, that's illegal. That's tampering. People have been deducted picks. 2 of them this year, the Suns and the Sixers, were taking their second round picks away due to tampering last year. So it is a penalty, but most of the time we've been laughing at it. We've been like, oh, second round picks. What does it matter? And those are all fair, right? Those are fair.
Yeah.
However, perhaps tampering is dead, or they're going to try or this version of tampering is changed rapidly.
They're just gonna wait longer to
yeah.
tell us what they've already done. Yeah.
Well, essentially, but some of this, like Isaiah Hartenstein, implied that some of these teams waited up till the exact minute they could to meet with these players. Like, as in, we're already like flying to the location when the clock would have turned over, so they could officially. So I don't know if some of this is bullshit. I don't know.
Is that where they fully signed a contract?
No, well, none of this is fully signed, right? These are all agreeing. It's a
Oh,
moratorium. So nothing is official. In fact, actually, everything we're talking about could essentially fall through, but most 99.9% of the time won't.
Wasn't there an instance where there was they got cold feet? Besides like DeAndre Jordan. I think.
Yeah, I mean, DeAndre Jordan's probably the most notable in this regard. I don't think we've had any crazy ones, but I probably forget too, because sometimes these things are bigger in the moment than they are in the overall. But yeah, so the start of free agency came and went pretty quietly, and then things started to trickle in. Some people blame it on the new CBA. Some people perhaps just looked at this free agent class and thought that it needed to go a certain way, with Paul George sort of being the leader of the domino effect. Even though certain guys fell before him, it feels like whenever his decision was official is when a lot of the biggest pieces started becoming official across the board, even if they were announced before his was. Because I think I went to bed the night of free agency and he was still not a Sixer, but when he woke up, he was. And a lot of guys had already kind of made announcements before that. The other weird thing about free agency this year, and Adrian Wojciechowski was the most guilty of this, but Shams definitely did it too. For some reason this year, the agents got shouted out in every deal for Woj. Every single deal announced, Woj made sure
noticed
to shout out the agents, and that was new. I'm not saying that's never happened.
I wonder if that's because they before this year, if they were a Clutch client, it was always mentioned, and so now the other agents are like, "Where the
they're going to mention
that? That could be easily. And Shams didn't do it a lot. Did not do it as much. I went and checked today. He did do it on a couple of the bigger ones though, like James Harden, Isaiah Hartenstein, some of the bigger names that came off.
People he knew the agents for.
Yeah, probably that too. Well, I mean, they all converse with these people. That's who's leaking the information. So anyway, those were the two things about the changes this year that I thought were interesting. How much that actually stays a change, we shall see. But before we get started into this long avalanche of what will lead us to talking in a more open way about the Spurs and the Mavericks, is there any other thing about those 2 days you guys wanted to talk about?
I mean, we have to. I mean, I guess it'll be part of talking about the Lakers, but I think it should be a separate thing. Just some of the brawny whatever.
Well, there's not a lot with the Lakers, so it kind of is a lot of the Laker talk.
Okay, then
it pretty much is the Laker talk.
Yeah, we'll put it in there.
Yeah,
cool. I just want to make sure. Yeah. It feels like that should be a pretty big story for the NBA. So
obviously, I shoehorn the Lakers no matter what we do, but yes, I think this one that's pretty much the meat of the subject there. But we're going to start with the defending champions, the Boston Celtics.
Soon to be sold Boston Celtics.
And that's exactly why we're starting with them. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't even have made this rundown. And yes, there are some teams that are going to miss this rundown. They aren't teams that are, it's like Miami. It's like Golden State. It's teams that didn't do a ton of things yet, or kind of did things that I didn't think were as relevant or that I could get across via telling the story of other teams off seasons, like New Orleans. I can tell New Orleans' season through Atlanta, right? So that's kind of how I've done it. If you feel offended, then suck a dick. I don't know what to tell you.
Do your own podcast.
Yeah, I mean, there's 30 teams, man. I wasn't going to make everybody sit through all 30 teams. I was just trying to get the meat of the subjects going through.
I need to know what Memphis is doing.
Sorry, Memphis.
I'm not.
Hello, Saudi money? ? Yes, as you mentioned, the Boston Celtics are looking to sell their franchise. Wyc Grousbeck was always how I thought his name was pronounced, but they've been calling him Grousbach lately, and I'm not sure which one it is anymore. Okay. Grousbach feels like the way he would say it is.
What vowel
Grousbeck feels like the way it probably is. It's spelled Grousbeck, but I'm not surprised that the rich guy's telling me to pronounce it Grousbach. That's the only way. That's what I'm saying. If I
have proof from when my family came to this country that they were spelling our names a little differently depending on what gate agent you got at Ellis Island.
Exactly. That stuff does matter, and so it's sometimes these things change. Okay, so hello Saudi money. We've been making this joke. It seems like it's going to happen. I mean, I just told you guys, Team USA is playing 2 games in Abu Dhabi, so clearly this is coming. Also, Jeff Bezos sold $5 billion worth of his shares today.
Oh,
nothing too crazy about that, right?
Right.
It could also just be the Seattle expansion franchise. Could be getting ready for that.
Current Celtics the current owners bought what in like early 2000s.
Yeah, so the Celtics actually have changed hands quite a bit over their time, especially for a marquee franchise. But that
Oh.
was the last time that they were in the same. They've been in the same hands for quite a while, so it's not surprising.
Yeah, I mean,
would
these
say
guys, this ownership group brought the franchise back. I mean,
yes, they are responsible for saving the day in a large part, especially over this last run where they've been much more patient than most other franchises would be. And I think as a result, that's why they're holding this championship as much as anything. Is a lot of times they wouldn't have been in a chance to do this. For as far as building their team goes, they paid everybody, right? Derek White got 32 a year coming to him. Tatum's got 63 coming to him. They picked up Hauser's option, and they're going to give him money. Cornette, Tillman, and Keita, who are all decent role players on their roster last year, are coming back. So they're basically running the
what
whole
the guy
thing
who's
back.
hitting all those half-court buzzer beaters?
Already on Peyton Pritchard, already on contract, so he didn't have to worry about him
It's
this
like
year.
that guy. If anyone earns some money,
He might be, yeah. They might end up trading him this year.
you might
because of
not.
these-
You might think because of the scores that those weren't daggers, but at least one of those had to have been a dagger.
Exactly. Well, they were frustrating. There's no doubt about that. At least to the fans. We're just going to commend Wick, though, no matter what, for the fact that not only did they keep this team together, that they brought back a fallen, dynasty essentially in the 2000s to respectable standards. I think they're still below par where they want to be. Probably 2 titles in 20 years.
but they have a bar
I
that's
mean,
going to be impossibly met in
exactly.
current sport. So,
But that's the other part of this. Is this going to be what helps the Lakers actually compete for the most titles of all time in the future? Because now could they be sold to an idiot? And then boom, now we're on the same level.
I wonder what Brad Stevens
Yeah.
thinks about all this.
I mean, but you have to wonder, right? Now, again, I think this is more like the Mavericks, where you have a competent, smart owner who does love and care about the team, selling it
Currently? Oh, sorry, I got you.
selling it to people who can financially take care of it in the new version of the NBA.
And who are less likely to be involved in personnel decisions.
Yeah, I mean that's
I don't know
always
enough
going
about
to
the Celtics
yeah.
owner. I was kind of going with the
I mean,
Mavs
look,
on there, but
We'll get
Yeah.
to the nepotism talk, but obviously the Dallas Cowboys have a problem with this. The Lakers have a problem with this. The Yankees probably still have some sort of problem with this. Nepotism is going to rot a franchise no matter how great it is. And there's great buses. There's probably Joneses that are really useful to the Cowboys brand and organization, but as a whole,
Charlotte.
what they've done, yeah, you know what I mean? But what they've done as a whole is not enough, right? So it's a frustrating situation that it can happen. Boston has been very lucky. Will they continue to be lucky? That is the question. But at least they
Let's
have a
hope
great
not.
title window. Well, and they're going to have to go into next year without Kristaps Porzingis for the most part. So it's not going to be the easiest defense. But that's all for the Celtics, unless you guys have anything else. We're going to be pushing on.
I forgot to
Oh.
mention that week that Caesar's out after the Celtics won. That was it. Jason Tate. Yeah, Jason Tatum stole Corey Seager's. I wonder. They wondered what would happen if we didn't win the championship.
But weren't they both just quoting Kanye?
Well, it's a difference between one of them did something that happened 15 years ago, and then the other one's like 3 months
But I
later.
thought Corey was quoting the Astros.
Yeah, he was making fun of the Astros.
The
So it was
Astros guy was
relevant.
quoting
He was
Kanye.
quoting Kanye. Corey's was relevant
Yeah.
because he was making fun of something someone said like 3 weeks before that.
Yeah.
Not just
Well,
stealing.
Tatum got in trouble because he hit
He
the
also
whole
tried
gambit.
he tried to recreate. He tried to get his own Kevin Garnett moment. We did
only thing, though,
it.
Give him credit. He did not take the Kobe picture. People tried to force it like he did, but he did not take the Kobe picture.
No, I didn't
So
see enough of the
shout
pictures
out
to
to
see.
Tatum.
But he did literally everything.
He did everything else.
It.
I still think LeBron
He
probably has
did
the best.
it.
LeBron probably has the best in the About Damn Time.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was just so perfect for the moment. It's
Yeah.
about damn time. It was.
And
it was
honestly, if it wasn't for Lonely Island, I wouldn't even remember Kevin Garnett that much. So
that's fair. No, that's fair. They did kind of immortalize that.
I'm on a boat. Did it.
Anything is possible.
We'll push on to a team that's pushing their chips in the middle and is no stranger to having the SNL cast sitting on the sidelines of their games.
And if you want to go through some nepotism exercises,
has struggled with nepotism in the past.
We'll start right now with Jalen Brunson and work our way around in a circle.
To see, they've really benefited from nepotism more lately than not.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's it is funny
but
when that conversation happens. The
it
guys like
did
that are
take-
probably like, oh.
It did take some nepotism looking itself in the mirror and handing over the franchise to someone else who then used nepotism. That's a different story. The New York Knicks, the busiest team in the league this offseason, I guess you could say. They were the busiest on draft night. They had 5 trades, not including the Mikal Bridges trade that happened before the draft. They landed Tyler Kolek, which is one of the better upperclassmen guards who fits in perfectly, could potentially be a TJ McConnell type for Tom Thibodeau. You know he's excited for that. And in the first round, they took Pacom Diadi, I don't know, another French wing that's 6'8" and all the athletic traits in the world. The French it's getting ridiculous. So they took 2 intriguing prospects, basically mortgaged all of the picks, the surplus of picks they had, turned them into future assets, and they kept the ball rolling. They signed OG Anunoby to an average contract at $43 million a year for 5. However, they did drastically cut themselves down at the 5-man position, where they've let Precious Achiuwa hit free agency. They can re-sign him, but if you let him hit free agency, there's probably a reason why you weren't too concerned with that. And then they lost their somewhat sub-starter Isaiah Hartenstein to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And now they just have Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle that they can throw out there.
I will say about the Hartenstein signing, one, I was shocked that he got paid that much considering his career arc.
If you look at the contracts, it's pretty fit, yeah.
But also, I thought it was very, very funny how NBA Twitter, a good portion of NBA Twitter, for those who may not know Isaiah Hartenstein's ethnic background, he is,
He's white.
I believe, like he is
75% white, 25% black, and that's fact. But
Yes.
he looks whiter than I do.
And my favorite thing was
Those
watching
numbers
some of the
don't
reactions.
really work that way, but I'm gonna allow it.
I'm just quoting what everyone else has been quoting, and I'm gonna let
Like
them
when
have it.
someone says they're half and half, I'm like, I don't think you understand how far back lineage
I'm gonna
doesn't
let
just go back to one parent.
I'm gonna let them have it. I'm gonna let them have
Let
the
'em
simple
have it.
math.
There's thousands of years of seed in there that you're okay.
Yeah.
Simple math, brother. Don't worry about it.
Well, either way, with him, the reaction to his contract, a lot of it, for those who are just learning about his ethnic background, was, I love seeing a black man get paid. And I just thought that was the funniest reaction to the Isaiah Hartenstein. Because you look at him and you're like, buddy, what?
Also,
Then
was
you
it
look
time
at-
for Chet Holmgren to maybe learn a lesson in self-awareness as well?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. That was cringe. All that entire post was.
Sorry
so-
to have to go back here, but it was Pacom Dadier.
Dadier, that makes
Dadier,
sense.
sorry.
Dadier, yes.
Well, first of
I need
all,
to start writing
Chet Holmgren.
pronunciations down.
How do I pronounce?
First of all, Chet. Nobody
Chet
calls
Holmgren.
Oklahoma City the Big O.
Yeah.
He was calling it the Big O.
Nobody calls it the Big O.
Yeah.
That
And he
takes
said- what'd he say?
longer.
His
And
brother?
then,
That takes
what
did they call
longer
him?
to say than OKC.
He called him his brother or something.
His light skinned brother, I think
Light
is what he
skin
called
brother,
him.
yeah. Oh, bright skin.
I was
That's
like,
what he called it. Bright skin.
Oh, it was
Bright
bright.
skinned twin, I think it's what he called
I
him.
mean, yes, that's
Bright
what
skin twin.
typically if you have black friends and they'll call you might as a white man be called bright skinned. But either way, that's a choice for him to have tweeted that. But hey, that's part of why he probably works the NBA. That is the team I wanted to move
"Welcome
forward
the
to.
O." Yeah, welcome to the
Uh,
O. My bright skinned twin
Yeah.
is his exact quote.
So that was the team I wanted to move into. So while the Knicks have pushed their chips in and probably still have another potential move to make, have a very interesting all Villanova lineup to throw out.
Yeah, we could break that down at some point. Probably that's pretty cool.
It's
a smart
interesting. I mean,
concept.
we
If
talked
they-
about it a
if they
little
did
bit
play.
last
Did
time.
all of them play together? Yeah, you're right. They
Yeah.
did. Did they all play together at the same time there?
yeah,
Yes,
one
they're,
maybe.
they're all
year,
on the
but
roster.
there's
They
only
may not have
one-
actually.
Yeah, there was only one There's only 3 of them that cross over for a title. I think one of them didn't win a title or something. But either way, they
Josh Hart, I think, was the one who didn't win the title.
yeah, they're a very talented group. Definitely excited to see what the Knicks have and what they'll do to fill out the 5-man spot, because that is a bit of a question whether they keep Julius Randle, for how long they keep him. They still have a ton of picks, dude. Like, that's the other part about it. Like, they gave up a lot of picks, but they still have so many picks. So there's really a lot of flexibility with New York, and I think they've built themselves in a way that if they can possibly get that next piece to compete, they could really be putting themselves in a position like Boston did last year, where they can essentially more or less buy a title or buy a really good chance at a title.
But do they have the right coach for it?
Well, I think he's fine. I think it fits the brand, it fits the city, and it fits the players. And I think that's all that matters. Whether the health of these players can last, depth, whatever, we'll see. But Oklahoma City is who we're moving to. This is the team that probably made the biggest leap in the Western Conference, at least from the free agency standpoint. Free agency doesn't mean a whole lot, but in this world, we'll give them that credit. They re-signed Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe to long-term contracts that are very nice. They added Isaiah Hartenstein to give them rebounding and size depth that they desperately needed against Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford in the Dallas Mavericks. And then they were able to steal Nikola Topic with the 12th overall pick in the draft. And he will most likely redshirt, which gives them an even better chance to evaluate some of their younger players and potentially pivot to him if they really like him as one of the guards of the future for that team. Of course, there's also an Alex Caruso trade that we already talked about that's part of this whole offseason for them. So Oklahoma City has gotten much, much better. They still haven't quite pushed all the chips into the middle, but this is certainly getting as close to that as possible. And if a big fish was to come, even if Phoenix was to blow up and they needed the assets to bring in Durant back or something, there's just so many paths for them to do whatever they want. But speaking of Nicolas, the Denver Nuggets have had quite an unfortunate offseason thus far. The once defending champions, no longer can call them that anymore, we're looking to, of course, get back there, maybe dethrone Boston, take back their title. They still potentially have the best player in all of the world on their team, after all. They started this whole transactional period by sending Reggie Jackson's money out with 3 picks to Charlotte, 3 second-round picks. So that was just to get under the cap, or to get under a certain apron. Then they announced that they're working on a Jamal Murray extension. That makes sense. Unfortunately, that still hasn't come to pass yet, which also leaves a little bit of a question as to what the fuck. And then the biggest what the fuck, Chip, they let KCP go to Orlando. And I say let because on draft night, their GM was quoted as saying that Christian Braun could easily replace him. Or the day before draft, I think, as we said that. And
they did a full Amari Cooper.
They even leaked a story that they could have matched the contract he signed in Orlando, but he chose differently, which is most likely not how this situation unfolded. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's wife even got on Instagram to talk about it. Whether that means anything to you or not, it's up to you. But that was a thing. Very bold, number one, to do this when you're trying to compete in a small title window with a team that has a lot of salary cap going to other players like Jamal Murray, who's often injured, Michael Porter Jr., who's often injured and fairly flawed. You know what I mean? I mean, Aaron Gordon's going to need a contract soon.
Michael Porter Jr. is going to be working extra hard. He's got to put some money in his brother's commissary.
He's got 3 commissaries to pay for now, right?
At least 2.
There's at least 2 in the clink.
I know there's drunk driving with a manslaughter and the gambling.
There's 2 drunk drivers and the gambler.
I don't know about the one where someone died.
Yeah, there's one that's in jail because of that one, and there's another one who just got in trouble after that happened because apparently the Porters skipped the moral lessons and growing up.
Well,
you have that many kids, maybe it's difficult. You just can't. I don't know. but whenever your best kid is Michael Porter Jr., I'm worried. Like financially, that worked out for you well, but otherwise, this is a strange fella. Is what it is. There is also an interesting name that's tied to the Denver Nuggets in free agency right now. And while I like the fit, and while I would love the redemption arc, I'll always be on his side. It isn't exactly the name that's going to make Denver Nugget fans excited.
Carmelo Anthony.
It appears as if they're waiting for Russell Westbrook to either be bought out or traded to them, which actually does fit. I actually think Russell Westbrook would be amazing for them, but it doesn't quite answer the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope issue now, does it?
Of the 3-point guards that I could have had rumored come to me, that's one of the two I didn't want. So
it's showing you for their situation. It's a perfect. I think he's a great piece for them because he would give them the backup guard that they need, and he would be great running with Jokic, especially because he can attack the dunker spot. Jokic is an amazing guy to get people looks at that spot. So I think they would work. Again, though, he's not playing the three. He's not guarding the best defender. And the other thing is he's cheap. And that means your team is being cheap. That means your title-winning team with the best player on the planet is being cheap when they're trying to take care of a window. That's probably the worst part of that news. Because that's the other thing is if they wanted Russ, he could already be on their roster. They don't even want to pay for his they want him to be a minimum. They won't even take him at whatever bullshit like $4 million salary he's at now. They want him at the absolute minimum that the league's paying for. That's cheap. And that's not a great place to be if you're the Denver Nuggets hoping to capitalize. That's all I'm saying. And the other thing is, however you feel about Clutch Sports, the agency, pissing them off at this moment while you're trying to compete with Nikola Jokic, also a very poor decision. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is one of their premier clients, like one of their OG clients. That's a tough one. That was a tough look for the Denver Nugget fans. I know, and I've seen very, very unsatisfied opinions with them and Calvin Booth, their GM, who inherited this team from the guy who is now running Minnesota. So that's a lot to say. We'll keep an eye out on Denver and the future of the Nuggets as their title window looks so beautiful. And really, like I said, one of the best starting fives I've ever seen put together on a court has been broken up forever now. And they're going to have to try to fix that.
I mean, do they have the resources to do that? Just like draft picks wise and stuff?
They have draft picks that they've made that they feel confident about. Have any of those players shown me anything near Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's level? No. I like Christian Braun a lot, but this is asking a lot. It's asking a massive jump from a player that I don't think you drafted. If you drafted him with that much emphasis to be put onto him at this point, that feels like a bad idea. But Orlando got him. Orlando made a push a little bit into the middle here. I think that they wanted Paul George. I think Paul George probably had an interesting conversation with them, but ultimately that just wasn't going to materialize for a lot of reasons. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a perfect fit for them. They have absolutely no shooting and all the bigs and defense in the world. So now Kentavious should be able to play out his older years in an even better role than he has been on the last two teams that were perfect for him. I mean, he was pretty good with Washington too. They just were a waste of a life. For the Lakers, for the Nuggets, he was this perfect auxiliary piece to your starting lineup, and I think he'll be amazing in Orlando. They brought back Mo Wagner. They brought back the Minister of Defense, not Reggie White, but Jonathan Isaac, Captain MAGA himself. Goga Badatsi and Gary Harris all re-signed. However, Joe Ingles did dip. They weren't expecting that, but there's worse things to happen than 35-plus-year-old dudes not re-signing with your team. So good-looking future for Orlando. Jamal Mosley is going to be coaching the select team for the scrimmages against the big U.S. team. So that's always really cool. Lot to be excited about for Orlando. But that's pretty much it for the transaction market. I don't think they're going to be players on any other moves, at least yet. But
Word.
there was another team that had a whole fucking lot of cap space this offseason and made a whole lot of changes. The Philadelphia 76ers. They started off by re-signing their beautiful, hot shooting, fucking all-world, hopefully, point guard. I hype him up because he's South Garland's own, Tyrese Maxey. 41 a year now, Tyrese Maxey. They also brought Kelly Oubre back, which I cracked up about because not only did Kelly Oubre do that famous fuck you thing that endeared him so to Philly fans, do you know how excited Philly fans were that they ran him over and he re-signed with the team? That right there made them love him even more. He probably is a Sixer for life now. The team also brought back Andre Drummond. Not necessarily a surprise because they attempted to trade for him at the deadline. Of course, Chicago Bulls weren't trying to do any of that stupid shit like asset managing. They were like, we just like to let guys go for free around here.
Did you guys remember we had Michael Jordan?
Remember, Michael? We just made a ring of honor so that you never do. All right. Daryl Morey was able to get one of his guys. He got Eric Gordon to defer his contract option with the Phoenix Suns and sign a vet minimum contract with the Philadelphia 76ers.
I think I made a joke that he runs his franchise like I do in 2K. When it's like 8 years in, you just only know so many names still.
He's always got to have a couple of his guys, and this year it was no different.
It's all 2K generated players and the Ty Lue. So I'm like, I guess, come on, Ty.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, the biggest heist of the free agency is they stole Paul George away from they stole Paul George away from the Los Angeles Clippers for a $53 million a year deal, but most importantly, a four-year deal.
Player option on the end of that?
I don't actually know, but I know that the 4 was not offered by the Clippers, which was the reason why that contract did not materialize, and that the Clippers let him walk the way they did. Before we finish with the Sixers, it is important to note that because they now have Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond, they are most likely going to move on from Paul Reed, who could free up about $10 million in cap room. So the Sixers are not done yet, folks. They actually still have a bunch of roster spots too, so I expect some of the higher tier vet minimum guys to probably go there once they figure out their market doesn't exist. Philadelphia is going to have the chips pushed in. I just think that right now people are cautious about jumping them too high into the offseason rankings because there's so much change. I mean, literally, they're going to have like 3 total guys back from the team potentially, maybe 4 if Kyle Lowry comes back. So it's going to be very, very few guys returning from that roster, and that's probably a great thing because that roster wasn't that good last year, but it is going to cause for a little bit more of a,
I would caution all Philadelphia 76ers fans to temper your expectations with this group that has the history of not being very healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue. Maybe Joel will make a comment about them being the dream team and provoke a different type of fear into the Philadelphia fans' hearts.
They sent Dr. J to go get him.
I mean, fair enough. I mean,
it was Josh Harris, Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, and Julius Erving.
It was very impressive they were able to pull this off. And now, I mean, it wasn't the hardest thing in the world. They literally just knew what the player wanted and offered it.
They're like, have you heard of the Hulu show Clipped? Why don't you just watch some of that and tell us if you want to keep playing there?
Well, yeah, but he's going to be so old during this time. I mean, like maybe
the fourth year. The 4th year was a risk, and the Clippers were right for that belief, but they were wrong for doing what they did. And the reason I'm going to tell you why is because I would have had rather one more bite at the apple with Harden, Kawhi, and PG to maybe it all goes right. Maybe they're healthy. Maybe I get that. Because what you've done now as we transition into the Los Angeles Clippers is you've become the team that wouldn't sign the player you traded all of your assets for to a 4-year deal, even if it was more of the Kobe Bryant, like, thank you for what you've done kind of deal.
Thank you.
Let's not forget, let's not forget, Paul George was the best player or the most healthiest player on the best Clippers team ever. They had never gone to the Western Conference
bar.
Finals. What?
I just said low bar.
I mean, it's a low bar, but I mean, like, think about what this franchise has done. And Steve Ballmer bought this franchise, and he was very cocky about it. He not only thought that he was going to save the Clippers from their dreaded past, but that he was going to steal the Lakers' thunder completely. And he did such a good job in a couple of ways, but he fucked up in two massive ones. He signed Blake Griffin to a 5-year contract. He maxed out Blake Griffin and then traded him without him ever knowing. Your franchise's biggest and best name, for the most part, maybe him or Chris, depending on how you want to look at it.
Okay.
You burn that bridge. So much to the point the next time he saw you and came and played, he ran away from you instead of shaking your hand. And then the next guy on that list, maybe third guy, fourth guy, wherever you want to go on the all-time Clippers list, you just did this to. Okay, that's not enough? Well, guess who you signed last year? Josh Primo. Guess who you ended up cutting because you didn't even need him? Josh Primo. Guess who you signed this year? Kevin fucking Porter Jr. Why? Because guess what? Let's take away the one awful thing that he did that he had to go to court for. And let's talk about him as a basketball player. He's a black hole on offense. He's literally everything that's wrong with the AAU wrapped up in a basketball player, even when it's not talking about the bullshit going on. Yeah, it's cool. He can get you 20 points on a shit team. Is that what you are now? Because that's what you're telling me you are. They're also lead in contention to steal Miles Bridges away from the Hornets should anybody do that.
It's going south for the Clippers, man.
They re-signed James Harden, which is potentially going to be the saving grace for this franchise not giving somebody a lottery pick. Because, I mean, is Kawhi going to be healthy? Because if not, you're going to lean on basically James Harden trying to deadlift this team into at least play-in. You brought in Chris Dunn and Mo Bamba. I like Chris Dunn. Mo Bamba's a fucking party gimmick.
Hey, come on.
You gave Nick Batum real money in 2024, not a vet min, real money to Nick Batum. Shout out to the French team and shout out to Nick Batum. He's had a great career, but what the fuck? That should have been a vet min guy. And then you overpaid Derrick Jones Jr. because Clutch told you to? What? Like, I get where the defensive nature of this roster could maybe shine more with the current moves they've made. But it feels like you're adding a lot of negative karma to this group. And, you know, we're going to get to the team on the other side of town in a second. But if it wasn't for them doing some things that were always going to get them in the spotlight, I think we would all be more on the Clippers' asses. But there's so low expectations for the Clippers that I think most people are just not surprised that this happened.
It's just, another thing on the list for the Clippers. So,
and I think it's just disappointing because you're opening in a new arena. You know, you don't have your own draft picks. You've talked all this shit. You traded what could be the next best player in the NBA eventually in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for this guy. A lot alone with all those picks. So it's a very difficult situation. Now is a time where we can mention the clutch thing that we were talking about in the group chat earlier. Midway through the free agency moratorium, whenever this actually happened, I'm not entirely sure. Tim Cato had been reporting on it. But Derrick Jones Jr. played for the Mavericks last year, was offered and maybe probably would have accepted the Najee Marshall contract that we'll get to when we get to the Mavs, which was about 3 for 27, I think. And instead he signed with Clutch. Clutch got him more from the Clippers. Again, why this happened, I'm not sure. To answer your question, it is pretty much free game. They pretty much can do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, what I found out, so the rule for under the NBA PA, players that change representation must wait 15 days before signing with another agency. So that means between leaving his and signing with another one, there's 15 days there where he somehow ended up deciding.
Or I wonder if they're getting by with whenever he actually signs the contract.
Well,
You know what I mean?
it has nothing to do with his contract. He just can't sign with another representation.
Right,
for
but I'm
15
saying-
days. So it sounds
Right,
like Clutch worked it out even
Perfectly.
before. Yeah.
And maybe that was what it was, or potentially they're waiting on the signed official day, and that's what the league's rules actually dictate, is that whenever he is officially brought into, like whenever they help him finish the deal, he'll officially be under their wing. But I don't know. Maybe he already is officially under their wing.
I believe he is. I mean, it was announced that he was before the contract.
Yeah. All right. I mean, yeah, maybe that's what it was. So yeah, they're allowed to play this game. And it does happen frequently from what I was reading, especially with younger players, because usually your coaches, your parents will pick your first agent, and then you end up wanting to go with someone else. I also found out that it's pretty common for like a little MLM situation to go on where
Oh, and sorry, I just read further down here. There is an option where if your former representation and you agree that you can just waive the 15 days. So
that was probably,
Okay, nice.
they probably paid him off. Clutch probably gave him a percentage, right?
and that's the same people who represented him since he got in the league, and I think he has a pretty good good relationship with the guy who's the head of what is it called, Versus Management, I think. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I thought that was interesting, and yeah, I thought the 15 days had to do with teams, so never mind about that question.
So, but it did send me down a little rabbit hole, and I found out that it's not uncommon at all for guys that are veterans to actually be recruiting younger players to their agencies because it gives them a discount on their agent.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dirty secret. It's not
Makes
even, I'd
sense.
say it's kind of an open secret in the league that
Yeah.
the teams aren't in charge. The league's not in charge. It's agencies and shoe companies that are in charge.
Felt like Woj certainly sealed that in this year, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you know, when we always talk about with owners a lot, we're like, oh, they should do this, this, and this, and the owners aren't watching the same thing we're watching, and they don't care the way we care about some do, but yeah, so it's just we tend to forget how much shoe deals and agencies actually might matter more than Kyrie coming to Nico.
Yeah. To finish on the Clippers bit, PJ Tucker and Russell Westbrook both opted into their contracts. That is not what the Clippers would have wanted for this roster build. So they will now have to figure out how to either trade those players or they will have to cut them and be responsible for the dead money. Russ, that's not as big a deal. PJ, that's 10 milli, baby. Not the ideal amount of money you want to have rotting on the bench. Maybe this year it's a little bit better, but when the margin for error is that slim,
PJ.
and I mean, essentially you're recreating Paul George in the aggregate, right? So to quote Moneyball. So this is where you have to kind of get smart. So we'll see if they have to dump contracts.
$11.5 million for PJ Tucker.
Yeah, exactly. That was a crazy contract when he got it, but you know who gave it to him? It'd be Daryl Morey, I believe. The Los Angeles Lakers of Los Angeles that have LeBron James.
LeBron James.
It's time to head to downtown. We were in Inglewood for a little bit.
LeBrongelus. Sorry.
We were hanging out in Inglewood. We've seen the Intuit Dome. It's going to be pretty. The basketball played in it may not be, but it'll be pretty.
Is that where the pop out was?
The pop out is in Inglewood, but it wasn't at the Intuit Dome. It was at the old Forum, the old Lakers arena. Now we're going to go down to dingy downtown LA, to the Crypto.com arena, where the Los Angeles Lakers of Los Angeles play. They had a pretty nice draft day. They got extremely lucky on draft night. Dalton Connect fell to them at 17. That was probably one of the.
For some reason, every time you say his name, I keep wanting to correct you and say Dalton Kincaid, who I think is like an Eagles tight end or something.
He's a tight end in the NFL.
No,
Yeah, okay.
Dalton Kincaid? No, they're never an Eagles.
Dalton Connect is an interesting. He was SEC Player of the Year. He's a great shooter. Should fit very well into the LeBron James, Anthony Davis cycle. JJ Redick being your head coach, all those things should bode well. Of course, being a sharpshooter that has to, immediately help LeBron and the Lakers is usually not the most convenient place.
Has any first round Lakers pick ever had less pressure on them than this one, though?
And that is my next question. Because we had a press conference with the 2 draft picks of the Los Angeles Lakers. And one of them definitely got more attention than the other, and it isn't usually the way it goes. Bronny James, yes. LeBron James Jr. to some.
Was he
was
actually
selected.
LeBron James Jr.?
Yes, was selected.
Is LBJJ?
Yes, he is. And there is questions as to whether LeBron will become James Sr. on the back.
I would think he would, but
I think he will too.
Or let Jr. wear LBJJ, which
I think they both should. I think they should do James Jr. and James Sr.
The letters LBJJ. I don't know why I like that so much.
That is so now it's pressure time. Yeah. So like I said, Connect is still gonna have a lot of pressure because he's guaranteed to play on this roster, or he's guaranteed to be in every fucking trade package that the Lakers put out from now until he probably retires or moves on from them. Right? That's just life in this spotlight. Bronny, not so much. However you want to handle the nepotism angle is fine. I mean, the only argument that I think you could make for or against the nepotism angle is that it takes a roster spot away from someone, but then there is this other side of things where recently we've had kids, especially if you're a Lakers fan, you'll know this, come through undrafted intentionally, like Austin Reeves.
Yeah, if you're not going to be a first round pick, yeah.
So that they can control their careers more than other players. So realistically, and we just saw this with the Clippers, where they took Brandon Boston, who at one point was the number 1 overall player in his class at a high school. They took him around the same range as Bronny was taken. This is what happens. If a 5-star or 4-star falls late in the draft, this is usually where they go, is in this, fuck it, let's hope for the best area. So it really isn't a waste there. Now, the other side,
a better pick than Satnam Singh.
Yeah, and my thing is also I do like Bronny a lot. I think I worry about Bronny long term because of his size, but I do think that he's in good hands.
Heart condition.
I think the heart condition has been solved. I think that's the thing is the thing with heart conditions in basketball is we just need to know they exist. It's not that they can take you out completely. Because Chris Bosh, that was a different situation. We didn't know about Bosch's until way too late.
His was clots, wasn't it?
And it's clots
it's all over the body. Yeah.
But Jeff Green had to have fucking open heart surgery and still played for 15 years after that. So we have gotten to a point in medical science where we just need to know, and that does have to be back. Bronny's deal is guaranteed, and it is for a nice little bit of chunk of change.
Yeah.
That is notable. It does have a team option on the last year, so it's not entirely Lakers unfriendly, but it's certainly more than most second-round picks are going to get. And no, don't show me the fucking graphic of Nikola Jokic from 2016. That's a decade ago. Look up inflation, kids. This is not how arguments work.
Lots of good jokes, though, like the Lakers are covering Bronny's salary for a year, Bronny's allowance for a year.
The best one I saw was, man, that's really going to change his family's life.
Yeah. And if ever there was someone who really you could have shortchanged for the betterment of the team, that was probably him. But
they could have shortchanged somebody for the betterment of the team. But that might still happen, but it's not going to happen as well as it could have. LeBron opted out of his contract.
He's going to get him under the second at least, right?
And it seems like he will sign some sort of contract that will keep the Lakers out of the second apron. Whether that means another move has to be made, whatever, we'll see. They did this because LeBron wants to report to training camp and doesn't want to have to deal with the contract. So essentially, LeBron, in my opinion, signed a contract that was a 1-and-1 with a player option for next year and a no-trade clause, which is notable because now he and Bradley Beal are the only 2 guys in the NBA without it. Yes, I said that. Bradley Beal, Washington. Oh,
wait, not Bradley Beal.
Yeah, he's a Florida Gator.
I was thinking Avery Bradley.
Yeah, Avery Bradley's best case scenario would have been Bradley Beal. I agree, but it didn't happen that way. Actually, funny enough, Bronny is whoever.
Avery had a couple of decent years.
No, Avery was a good player, and in fact, Avery is who everyone's trying to say is Bronny's
Bronny's gonna
comp.
be. That's cool.
And I'm like,
Probably not who you want someone to say your comp is, because
well,
you probably
no.
want a name that's a little bit higher in the echelon. But
I actually think that's really accurate. Yeah, I think Bronny's never going to be an all-star level player. I think Bronny's I think he's an
if
NBA
he's
player.
even, I was gonna say, if he's even like a 7-8 year role player,
That's what I'm thinking.
yeah.
I'm thinking he can get a solid 10 out of there because that's good genetics. You know what I mean? But anyway, not the point. LeBron opted out. He will take a lesser deal. He could have taken up to $20 million less had they landed Jonas Valanciunas, Klay Thompson, or I can't remember who the third party was. Either way, they did not make the necessary transaction, and now LeBron will take his money. They also put Max Christie on a more futuristic deal with a little bit of money, not a lot of money. The reason I bring that up is because now it's starting to seem more obvious, according with the reports that we see as well, and the lack of movement, that the Los Angeles Lakers are not prioritizing LeBron James's window for winning titles. And that's fine, in my opinion. It's unfortunate.
Well, he's not prioritizing it either by taking these contracts. So
in a way he is, but he is in a way because it allows them ultimate flexibility. However,
taking a max doesn't seem to give you taking.
Well, but he wasn't. He was going to take up to $20 million less a year.
I'm going to say, I just if he really wanted to win more titles, he could turn his salary down to league minimum, and
that's exactly what he's. But that's exactly what he's done to some extent. Now he's not going to do the league minimum.
Kind of like Dirk, the Dirk, yeah.
But Dirk also fucked that up and get.
But still make money.
To do what? Get
well, it's
Chandler
not
Parsons
Dirk's
paid?
fault that. Yeah, it's not Dirk's fault that Cuban sucked.
That's why LeBron is doing what he's doing. Essentially, what LeBron has decided is that he's going to stay in LA for the rest of his career, and that every year, for however long that may be, he is going to give the Lakers the option to do whatever they can. And if they don't, he's going to look at that cap sheet and he's going to say, "Thank you, I'll take what's left." Okay. And that's how it's going to go, right? So I like what the Lakers are doing stubbornly against LeBron because I get it. You want to make this window work, but the reality is just not that. Like you have to build a program. Even the Mavericks are having to build a program and maybe even could still be in jeopardy of not having built a deep enough program to compete long-term at the highest level.
There's clearly a balance between listening to what your best player has to say and actually following their commands.
And also understanding that LeBron could retire as soon as next season. So realistically, if I'm Rob Pelinka, I do care more about what Anthony Davis says. I do care more about what JJ Redick says.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or just whoever your actual management is.
I'm not promising they're going to deliver, but if the Lakers are to get this shit together and build a program that works again in a real way that isn't just star driven, this is the path. So whether it works out or not, I don't know. They have no flexibility right now. And I think Rob Pelinka wanted it that way to tie his hands up. D'Lo, Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, Cam Reddish, all four had player options this year. All four picked up those player options.
So those all sound like guys who are accepting their player options.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were all guys that essentially you brought in on the cheap last year, and you were like, hey, you can play with us. You have a good year. You go get paid. And basically, they all had decent years, but none of them good enough to get paid off of, right? So now they're all back. So that's the Lakers in a nutshell. There's some talk of DeMar DeRozan. There's some talk of Jeremy Grant. We shall see. It's the Lakers. There will always be talk. So we'll move on to a team that keeps the Los Angeles Lakers on speed dial, just in case they're ever trying to come off those picks and those players, the Atlanta Hawks. We thought they were going to make DeJounte Murray a Los Angeles Laker. Instead, they bet on the Lakers sucking this year. They took the New Orleans Pelicans 2025 first-round pick. That's actually the Lakers' 25 first-round pick. They also took Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., E.J. Liddell, and the least favorable of a Milwaukee New Orleans pick in 2027. So that's where the Atlanta Hawks are. They have officially broken up the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray era. They have drafted Zachary Richechet with the number 1 overall pick, another Frenchman added to the game. They traded AJ Griffin, someone who that looked like a future piece of their team, to the Houston Rockets for number 44 overall. Whether that player ever pans out or not, we shall see. And they let Sadiq Bey hit free agency. And now Sadiq Bey might be the most random 50-point game of all time. We'll see how the rest of his career falls.
There was a moment, at least here locally, where there was, Josh Green was struggling early on, and people were seeing Sadiq Bey seemed to be doing pretty well. And I believe Detroit he started his career.
Detroit, yeah, I think he was a late or early second round pick of Detroit that year.
Yeah, and just hearing local media, it's like, oh man, Sadiq Bey, we could have had Sadiq Bey, and now we're stuck with Josh Green. And look at that. Now you have neither. But that's
and I like Sadiq Bey. He's unfortunately going to be coming off of a season-ending injury this year as well, so he's probably taking a vet min just to get his get anything back. But honestly, that could end up being one of the biggest value signings of maybe Philadelphia, maybe Dallas, maybe Clippers, Lakers. Who knows? Maybe it helps one of these teams have that extra little punch at the vet minimum, which is so valuable. If you get anything out of your vet minimums, it's like double. To the team with the second overall pick that chose the second Frenchman that we're going to talk about from the draft, the Washington Wizards. They took Alex Sarr with the number 2 overall pick. They will pair him up with Jonas Valanciunas. After landing him in probably one of the more shocking free agent deals, because Valanciunas went for 10 a year, 3 years, 10 a year.
Yeah.
Thought there was plenty of teams that would have been interested in that, including one I just talked about, the Lakers. That seems like that wouldn't even have to have cost LeBron much of anything, really, with his salary either. But it didn't happen. Valanciunas walks, and now they're sort of sitting here in a position of, what do we, I guess they're going to help him be a reliable, a reliable player next to a developing 4 who's a little, on the need for development side. I thought they fucking killed it with the asset management part of the draft. They took on Malcolm Brogdon's contract from Portland. They also got number 14 in the draft, which they took Bub Carrington, which is a lot of people's favorite sleeper point guard in this draft. And all that cost them was Denny Avdia. And there's going to be picks involved there too. And I think Avdia is a really talented player. I think Portland could end up getting a lot of use out of him. I thought it was an interesting team to have bought in on Denny, but it makes more sense than maybe Mavericks were a team very, very, very in the Denny Avdia market. But for the Mavericks, they need guys who are ready to go, that they feel more comfortable, they get in the building and go. I think you take Denny and you love the upside. You think maybe this is the biggest upside swing ever, especially with what he gets paid. But you have to trust that he's comfortable in this role, that he's able to do everything you can ask him to do, or else it could trickle negatively quickly. So I think Portland's a great situation where they need his wing presence. They don't have a lot of wings there. They could always use the shooting. Everybody can. So I think that's a pretty awesome one. And then Landry Shamet's deal, his option has been pushed back to the 13th of this month, which means that will give them more time to come to some sort of agreement on either trading him or most likely cutting him, and that will add an interesting free agent shooter to the market. Getting into the Portland Trailblazers, they took Donovan Clingan at 7, which was one of the surprises of the draft, I think, to a lot of people. Once it was made, it kind of became a little more obvious. That's really notable because now Robert Williams III and DeAndre Ayton certainly become a little more available than they were. Now, I think they'll keep Ayton for at least a year, maybe a year and a half to 2, in order to let Clingan really get developed. But this certainly makes me think that they will be looking at some sort of DeAndre Ayton trade package in the future. And maybe that could end up being something that swings a title race or a playoff race because, we can make fun of DeAndre Ayton, but he's certainly an interesting player, and he's probably not going to get too much more expensive in his career. So it's positive.
All right. And then what do you think they could get for Ayton at this point?
They could probably get a first out of it, but they're probably getting protections. I think at this point, there's not a clear enough market. And again, I think they probably value him more. I think they want to get Robert Williams moved first because that guy never even played for them. They got him from Boston last year, essentially, as a throwaway into their deal. to offload that contract. I don't think they want him at all, and he didn't play for them because he was injured last year. So I think that's the that's the player they would move first, and then they would look at the Ayton stuff once Klingon's ready to take the full job. Because Ayton still should have 10 years in the NBA. You know what I mean? If he puts his effort in there and his body holds up, he should still have a really good, solid NBA career, even if he's already seen his best years.
Gotcha.
The Bucks, they were one of the teams most needing to hit on the margins, as some of these playoff teams like to say. But their draft was pretty controversial. They drafted A.J. Johnson and Tyler Smith. Again, not with the premier draft picks, obviously.
It's crazy. You wouldn't think you'd draft an offensive lineman for your NBA team.
Well, unfortunately, what they did was they drafted two of the youngest and rawest prospects in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
A win-now situation where you don't have enough veterans or roster spots to go with your big four or whatever you want to call it.
You know what they could really use is like a Drew Holiday.
They could. They essentially did this last year in the draft. And the last guy they drafted who had a decent impact on them in the playoffs, Dante DiVincenzo, who didn't even finish that playoff run when they won the title.
Nice.
So I would look at the GM a little bit and be like, hey, man, you have whiffed on like 5 straight drafts on top of trading all of our assets for a guy we didn't need after we traded all of our assets for a guy we did need. They also signed Alon Wright. Throw a party for him. Oh, and Taurean Prince. I forgot that happened. So Darvin Ham and Taurean Prince are together forever. I'm sure Laker fans will be circling all the Bucks games that they can find to dance on any potential graves. Because that bromance was quite funny to watch play out on the grand stage of Lakers Twitter. Moving on to the team that made the massive trade last year, the Phoenix Suns. They re-signed Royce O'Neal. They let Eric Gordon walk. That is what it is. We already knew they would keep Royce O'Neal. We already knew Eric Gordon did not enjoy his one season in Phoenix. They took Fitz in the draft, but who knows how impactful those guys are going to be. They made a massive upgrade at the 5 position by letting Drew Eubanks go and signing Mason Plumlee. Unfortunately, they are sticking with Yusuf Nurkic, which is just a fact, unfortunately. And they signed Monte Morris, who is a great value play, but certainly does not add any defense to a roster that desperately needs it. We will be interested to see what they continue to do. And probably the most interesting note to mention here that also our Houston friends can take a little bit of interest in. The Houston Rockets took control of the Phoenix Suns, or the Phoenix Suns draft moving forward because, according to reports, they believe they can go after Kevin Durant in the event that Phoenix blows up this year. Of course, Phoenix already announced from Matt Aishiba, the owner, that this would not happen.
Wow.
But unfortunately, the only contract that you should move has a no trade clause on it.
That's right.
That was your decision.
Yeah.
Not to give him the trade clause, but to take on the player with the no trade clause.
Yeah, the whole idea of Kevin Durant going to Houston makes no sense for either side in terms of being competitive. Like,
especially
when different timelines.
If you're going to go down that route, we'll see if the Warriors blow their load on Lauri Markkanen. But you would think Warriors, maybe, definitely Thunder, Knicks. You would think there's plenty of teams that have been hoarding picks just for this type of situation.
Yeah.
Of course, I think everybody would love to see him go to Oklahoma City if that would happen. But we'll see. Phoenix, don't freak out just yet, but maybe get ready. I think, honestly, the worst part of the Phoenix Suns offseason is that he was just at Drake's house partying.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Hold on. Continue. I got to find this tweet that just so... I don't know.
Embarrassing.
Embarrassing it is.
Oh, my God.
Well, I'm going to get to the Raptors soon, but not quite yet. I have the Wolves next. The Wolves tie in a little bit here to San Antonio, but we're not going to get fully into that. All we need to know is they traded up for Rob Dillingham. They drafted him 8 overall. This is a player that I talked about probably shouldn't go that high. They made him go that. They took him that high anyway. They chose to move future assets to San Antonio instead of their, something like their 27th pick in this draft, which maybe would have made more sense to me or would have been how I would have tried to play it.
And yeah, they might have tried that.
They might have tried it. We don't know. But to me, that's what you would have wanted if you're Minnesota instead of giving up that far into the future.
Instead, they gave away a current 7th grader.
Yeah. And I've heard people be like, well, but Anthony Edwards will be only certain age. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what's the rest of it's still the distance. It's never the players involved. It's always the distance.
Yeah.
A little bit there. It's so unpredictable. The NBA changes year by year sometimes. Terrence Shannon is who they took with their 2nd pick in the first round. That was an interesting one because he was a guy who probably goes in the lottery, except for he had to beat a rape charge in college. So why the Clippers didn't move in for him, I don't know. Making light of that is not fair, but I will say to be in to be fair to this kid, he testified on his own behalf in this case, and he beat the case because of it. From what I understood, from what Jay Billis was talking, who is a lawyer and an NBA expert or basketball expert, mentioned that because he testified in his behalf, which most people don't do in this case, that certainly gives him a larger air of not guilty. Whether he is or not, the jury decided. You can decide that it is what it is now. Yeah. But that was the facts of the case. I also thought it was interesting to note that they dumped Wendell Moore's salary. I know you guys are probably like, who the fuck is Wendell Moore? Why the fuck do we care? This is some draft pick that didn't pan out. Well, this was the draft pick that the Dallas Mavericks sent to the Houston Rockets for Christian Wood. So there you go. Everyone's mad about the Christian Wood year. What did you really give up? You gave up a kid who got cut 2 years into his career. And then Kyle Anderson has been signed and traded to the Golden State Warriors as they continue to rebuild Clay in the aggregate with many weird signings, which I just didn't add Golden State to this rundown because Golden State's obviously very weird. It's been very weird, and I still think that maybe they'll go after Larry and land him, and then we can talk about Golden State all we want next week. But for right now, I just don't understand their offseason. I think they still have a chance to make one more move. If they don't, then we'll talk more about that and the future of Steph Curry because you kind of have to. The Joe Ingles signing is the last move the Minnesota Timberwolves have made. That's not really anything crazy. It's just basically adding another player from the Jazz. Now there's 4 ex-Jazz players on that roster. Bold choice, but we'll see. Now we're going to head into the trio of mediocrity. 3 teams that I felt like needed to be mentioned, but not in depth because they all are basically the same team over again. This is the Bulls, this is the Raptors, and this is the Nets.
Oh, yeah.
Why are they all the same? Well, they all re-signed their youth. Pat Williams got a 5-year, $90 million deal. Emmanuel Quickley got 5 for $175, and Nick Claxton got 4 for $100 million. All great asset management. Do you regret Quickley signing eventually? Potentially. That's a lot of money for Emmanuel Quickley. Pat Williams, that could be a great deal when it comes down to it. And Nick Claxton's awesome. In fact, they might actually have to get rid of Nick Claxton in order to tank like they want to in Brooklyn. Pivotal decisions are still going to be made this offseason, but some have already come down the pipeline. The Bulls are going to move on from DeMar DeRozan. Most likely will move on from Zach LaVine if they can manage it. The Raptors are officially building around Scotty Barnes in every capacity. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it's the right way you're supposed to build a franchise over again. And then the Nets obviously cashed in on Mikal Bridges. But here's where they're all still potentially a part of that mediocrity. The Bulls did trade for Josh Giddey, who showed very good signs of being able to put up nice numbers when he was giving a large role last year. And they brought in Jalen Smith from the Pacers, who's a pretty decent big man for them and sort of can help revitalize their weird-ass big man rotation. Not quite going into tank mode, but there's still a chance that team could be the worst record in basketball. They also have to make a decision on Lonzo Ball. Do they cut him? Do they trade him? What happens? The Nets kept Claxton. That was a perfect move. You can't get rid of that asset for nothing. It would have been stupid as fuck. He would have been by far one of the most coveted free agents. You kept him, but you might have to move him because you're gonna want to tank. That's why you got all those. That's why you made those deals with the Rockets, so you can get all your. You can have a chance at Cooper Flag this year, right? Edgecombe, the kid that's going to go to Baylor, was just the best player on the Bahamas team, and that's got like 5 NBA guys on it. So you kind of want to be in the tanking mode for some of this. And then for the worst case scenario for Brooklyn, what if Ben Simmons does come back and play all-star level basketball?
Now that's a big if.
If that happens, that man is out the door quick. If that shit happens, they're taking the first deal that comes their way. I don't give a fuck what happens. But that would be funny to see. And then Scotty Barnes, is he really the guy? Do you put that much money into Emmanuel quickly? You still have Bruce Brown's contract on the books. Do you keep him to stay mediocre? Do you trade him for more assets? So the Raptors, the Nets, the Bulls, they all have seemingly given themselves outs of the mediocrity, but will they take it? To the team that we're going to really briefly mention the most here, that could be stuck in mediocrity, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They did re-sign Donovan Mitchell to a 3-year, $150 million deal.
I'm surprised he did that, honestly.
You shouldn't. And there's a reason why I'm very much...
The worst kept secret in basketball was he was leaving.
Yeah, if you only watch First Take, I agree. That would have been your takeaway. And for Cavs fans dunking on ESPN, I plead for you to stop and reconsider the circumstances. When in the hell was this man ever not going to max out his deal with the team that holds his rights? And why would you not think that he would give them this extra off season? They've given him a new head coach, one he likes, and one that you could see as a legitimately nice head coach. They have roster fluidity that they could move on a guy and make some sort of changes to make this team more competitive. But they also could end up locking themselves into a 2-guard, 2-big lineup that's good, not great. And then you're stuck in that situation. And guess what? This was a 3-year deal. So the pressure is still absolutely fucking on the Cleveland Cavaliers to win now. And really, what changes from what we just experienced to what could happen by the trade deadline? Donovan Mitchell could still be within the last calendar year of being a Cavalier. That's all depending on what the Cavs do. So for Cavs fans to be playing poor me victim bullshit, it's a little annoying because I understand what ESPN does, but you're crying wolf a little bit here because there is a real issue. There is a real question of roster, and there is an impatience with athletes this age. It's just happened too many times for you to be this ignorant of it. I'm glad he resigned, but there was never a world where he wasn't going to. Moving into Detroit, they hired the former Cavs head coach, J.B. Bickerstaff. The disgruntled coach will get to stay in the division in order to exact his revenge. But in order to do that, he's going to have to take what's been the league's worst franchise for quite some time and inject a little bit of life into it. They surprised everybody by taking Ron Holland at 5 in the draft. Ron Holland was also the only first-round rookie that was interviewed about Drake or Kendrick that chose Kendrick. We've noted that. They extended Cade for $45 a year. They had to do that, but there is some concern because Cade's development still has some areas. There's a health thing. They brought Tobias Harris back on a $26 million a year deal. It was only for 2 years, but you were going to do it. Good luck trying to trade it if that was your thought.
I remember who they were comparing it to. They were going through Tobias Harris's career earnings and Klay Thompson. It's about the same. And they're going through all the accolades of Klay Thompson, and you get to Tobias Harris, and it's finished 20th in most improved player voting in 2018.
You know who his agent is, right?
Is it Rich Paul?
It's his dad.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So Tobias Harris, I honestly don't hate that deal because they need maturity. I think the only issue is just, again, if you thought you're going to be able to flip Tobias Harris within a half a year and a half, I just don't see where that logic comes into. And honestly, if any other team had offered Tobias this money, I would have been looking at it stupid. But I think this was perfect for the Pistons. They also declined Evan Fournier's option, which allowed them to take on Tim Hardaway's money for 3 second rounders, I think was what the ultimate tally was on that one.
I'm not sure.
And then that also sent Quentin Grimes to the Dallas Mavericks, who we finally move on to. Our big two. We've made it here. The Dallas Mavericks. I'll run down everything, and then you guys can just kind of run with as much as you want to run with.
Before you do that, I found the tweet that I wanted to talk to you guys about. This photo is taken by Elliot Wilson. It's Kevin Durant. He's hitting one of these poses, sitting down. This is at Drake's party or whatever, just stroking his beard. And Drake's taking a pull out of a hookah, it looks like. But this is the tweet that made me laugh. And I didn't know if I sent this to you guys or not. But it reads as follows. One of the biggest losers in his sport, who is also a snake and is a lame, who is past his prime and gets very emotional when people tell him the harsh truth about himself. The other person in the photo is KD. So that one, going back to our KD talk. Well,
I saw one that was he doesn't have to keep the family away because he doesn't have one. It's.
And I saw that one. That was pretty decent.
Look, Kevin Durant has made it a choice. He's not the only one. Did you see Drewski, the comedian, try to tell people in LA not to put on that song?
Yep. He tells the DJ in LA not to put on that song. Like, that's a choice.
Hey man, that Drake connection. Nobody wants to ruin that Drake connection, man.
Well, not those two.
Not those two, at least.
Some
not
people
the
didn't
two
mind.
Not the two that really need it the most, probably. I like Drewski, though. He doesn't need it, but that is a good cosign for him. It's probably a little bit of a bitch. Durant, though, that's just who Durant is. We shouldn't be surprised.
You know what we didn't discuss, and now I'm seeing they're not on your list here at all. The weird Utah Jazz Filipowski situation.
Yeah, I did not manage to fit Filipowski here. We can run that through, but it's... He got groomed by a Mormon, potentially.
Yeah,
allegedly.
so his
cousin who's a Mormon.
I never heard the cousin angle.
I've heard it's even extended to cousin. I've heard there's
so some NBA Twitter sleuths went through some of her photos, and there's like a family reunion where he is tagged in, and she's in the photo.
Well, she was also a babysitter.
He's not allowed to. Yeah. He's not allowed to talk to the family anymore.
He doesn't talk to his family. It's pretty much culty. Could only get to
culty groomy for sure.
Yeah. And so, but hey, Utah has a new star player. They handed him Karl Malone's jersey upon him coming to the facility. So I think they're ready to roll. Honestly, I think the Jazz really need to reassess trading Lauri Markkanen because. Do you want to not double down on this extremely caucastic team that you've built before the NHL comes and dominates the market? Don't fuck around, Salt Lake. Once these people realize that there's just a bunch of goofy-looking white dudes with Shlovetskis all over their jerseys, hitting the shit out of each other, playing a fast sport, and it's kind of cool in the arena too. So it's kind of like outside, it's not as all warm and gross as an NBA arena can get sometimes. I'm just saying, these people might be a little more interested in a hockey team than the Utah Jazz, and you might want to strike while the iron's hot.
Valid points have been made.
But no, I expect the Jazz to sell. I expect them to take somebody's Lauri Markkanen deal because it makes too much sense for them to not sell on that.
Okay, so... Sorry, I just wanted to go back on that, double up on that cousin thing. So I think they're all like close families, the two families. So they would use the term cousins when they were hanging out. So she's known him. She's known him since he was about 13, and that makes her like 19, 20 at the time.
No, she's 28, I believe.
Now.
Yeah,
but he's a 21-year-old now.
So 7
years.
Yeah,
so
20.
So she would have been 21.
Anyways, yeah, so pretty much, and the brother claims that she's been planning this for a long time to get rich, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
That's happened. I mean, PJ Washington, Brittany Renner. Brittany Renner coaching tree. How big is that going to be in a decade?
Okay. All right.
She even like was putting tutorials out there to women. Like dead ass. I remember she had TikToks that were going viral that were basically like tutorials to groom young basketball players.
Well, I would
Shit's crazy.
say if a Mormon was trying to groom me, I wouldn't be upset if it was this one. Moving on.
Well, yeah. I think that they both generic.
Listen, you out your motherfucking mind.
Look, I'm just saying.
Okay, back to the team at hand, the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh, them.
They dumped Tim Hardaway Jr. That probably right there alone could have gotten Mavs fans pumped on this offseason. Could have
You're
alone.
excited. You're excited about losing 2 juniors. What about the one you're trying to get back?
You traded up into the second round to draft Melvin. We now know the pronunciation is Melvin, not Melvin, like we would pronounce it, but Melvin. Ajinka, I think is how you pronounce it. I forget his dad. There was an Alex Ajinka in the NBA, and I don't remember how to pronounce that.
Is that if it's
AJ,
French, then
I,
you're gonna
and
get
yeah, they're
like
French.
the S sound out of that with that accent.
Ajinka?
Ajinka.
Ajinka? Yeah. I
who
forgot.
knows,
We had another one in the NBA one time, but I forgot. He wasn't that great. It was an ideal upside play. Will he redshirt? Will he do so if he does in Frisco, or will he go back to a club overseas? That remains to be in question. I did see him a part of the Summer League roster. So if he has a good Summer League, I think that answers a lot of the question. I think more or less you probably hope that Omax gets to be at least a part of the regular season rotation with the big club this year, and maybe this guy takes over in Frisco for a year and maybe gets a little bit of action. But I liked it. I thought it was a really fun upside play. Kid doesn't seem to be able to dribble much on his own, but he's like kind of capable. Like, I guess he's not a table setter at all. Like, he can't really, like, it's blinders when he gets the ball.
It's so
But he can
confusing
kinda
to
do a
me
lot of the
that there
things.
are guys that play pro basketball that just look so
Can't
bad
dribble.
at dribbling a basketball.
And it's not just that they. It's not that
Because it's not
they
like
can dribble.
it's not like you were
It-
created as a center from the time you were born. Like there was a time when you
But
were
it's
just
the brain-
outside dribbling.
It's the way that your brain is wired, especially playing that much basketball. So, like, for him,
Which I guess, yeah, when there's
he's-
that guys that are that fast around you, then you need someone who can protect while dribbling and all that. Yeah.
well, that's why players like Luka and LeBron are so special, because they can score, they can table set, they can do so much. But there's a lot of guys in the NBA who can only table set. They can't score on their own. Or there's guys who can score on their own, they can't table set. And I think for this guy, he's just going to be a really nice auxiliary player. But we'll see. He's probably the furthest down the line. Najee Marshall, 3 for 27. That's $9 million a year. Najee Marshall is going to have a couple of things about him that we should note. I think that he's going to be a more interesting player than Derrick Jones Jr. as a primary backup option. What I mean by this is I think that he'll be able to allow the Mavs second unit to look a little more fluid, even if they don't go and get Dennis Smith Jr. or add a third guard or give that to Exum or give Hardy more minutes, whatever the decision is. Najee Marshall can facilitate offense a little bit, especially when you're doing it against reserves. He is somewhat of a defensive stopper, but it's not the same thing as what Derrick Jones Jr. gave you. The biggest positive difference here is that he's a stronger player than Derrick Jones Jr. So if you're getting bullied by LeBron, in the case of Jaylen Brown, Paolo Banchero is going to be doing this a lot in his career. If you got guys who are just going to muscle you a little bit, Najee's going to be a nice thing to throw at them. But he's not going to be able to cover a lot of he's going to get burnt on the outsides a little bit here.
Yeah, I saw that. At least when it came to comparing two players, that Derrick Jones Jr. was definitely better at guarding guards or being able to keep up with
jumping
guards.
too. No, jumping.
I mean, yeah,
jumping
they-
is
And
Fast.
then
fast.
Lobs are gone.
Najee Marshall is going to be better against bigger players.
I wouldn't say the lobs are gone, I would say the
don't
lobs,
I
the
don't think
Derrick
Najee
Jones
Marshall
versions of
can
lobs
start
are
from the
gone.
3-point line while the pass is coming in from half court.
I think they will still exist. They will not be
No.
as sexy as they were with Derrick Jones shooting.
No,
though.
Yeah.
I
agree
did
with
see
that. The former dunk champion.
But his
I did
3-point
see-
percentage last year, he can even come close.
That's where there's I think ultimately kind of I think Najee Marshall will be fine, especially in this offensive system, especially with what we'll talk about is the final move or final big move probably for the Mavericks. We'll see if they do anything else. I think Najee will be fine there. I think that Derrick Jones probably also comes back down to earth a little bit this season with the Clippers in that regard because he kind of already did in the playoffs. So that's where I'm not as worried about it.
I am worried about his career 3-point percentage though, because it's 31.
I would say I would say Najee Marshall's as streaky as it gets.
I don't love that, but I guess that's why you go and
yes,
I mean,
the
it's
other
improved the last 2 years. So
in the final most important piece of this, Najee Marshall will absolutely get ejected from a basketball game
and that's part
for
of
getting up into somebody's ass.
Well, yeah, and part of why you want him around, at least from what I've heard, is you've got no one to protect Luke out there. So you
you have Markieff
need a
Morris on the
psycho-
bench.
Yeah, you need a psychopath.
And you know who Markieff Morris is trying to get on this team? Marcus Morris. You don't know. Just take Najee Marshall. And then the final massive move for the Dallas Mavericks. They signed and traded for Klay Thompson. That's a 3-year, $50 million deal, 17 a year average. So very nice, honestly, I would say. Probably really embarrassing for Golden State to see that number, but it was the number that he was going to get. He would have gotten a bigger number in LA, but chose to play for the Dallas Mavericks for a couple of reasons. We'll get to those in a second. This move also put Josh Green in Charlotte, and I thought
Poor Josh Green.
it was going to be Charlotte and Dallas splitting the seconds that go to Golden State, but I think Dallas ended up facilitating both picks in this. So that's ended up being the situation. Essentially, Klay Thompson for 2 second-round picks, and then Josh Green got dumped to make the financials work. That is a great trade for a lot of reasons. I'll do the smallest one first. I think Josh Green is going to be a great fit for Charlotte, and I think they're going to enjoy him, and hopefully he'll be able to bloom in a little bit easier spot. I think he low-key made more progression than we thought. But I'm glad the Mavericks, went ahead and cashed in that chip when they did. I think that the second part of this, the reason I really like Klay Thompson here is I think that truly, genuinely, there is going to be a very, very, very vengeful Klay Thompson revenge tour. However, I think that it will come in the form of an offensive renaissance. And it will not necessarily change the reality of who he is on defense now. That's where my pause comes for the Dallas Mavericks. And I don't want to rain on the parade because I think there's, plenty of time for that if it happens, obviously. I like Klay. I think it'll work. I think my biggest issue for the Mavericks, and they probably know this, is that this isn't it, in my opinion. I don't know that they need to do it right away, but I would start to figure out if I can't bring Dorian back, if I can't bring Cam Johnson back, if I can pair Max Kleber, Jaden Hardy, and whatever asset I have to, even if I have to overpay for a first rounder, I might, because I'm telling you right now, this looks like a Mavericks team that's going to take a large step forward offensively, but potentially a critical step forward or step backward defensively. Yes, I know Derek Lively will be better. Sure, you can sell me on Luka being more in shape and a better fit for things. You can sell me on a lot of those things. But I'm telling you, there is still a physical player missing from this group that they will need at some point to make this thing a title win.
And I mean, if you look at the roster they started with last year, and then what they were at the trade deadline,
Trust me, they are in a great position to be one guy away, if I may say so.
And I think too, I mean, I understand with the loss of like Derek Jones Jr., you lose a lot of athleticism defensively. Even if you are getting a little bit bulkier or a little bit better, maybe in like half court situations, especially for the playoffs, it's going to be good.
I think you really can't understate how much better the Mavs offense is going to be.
I mean, the
Yeah.
3-point percentage was so bad in the last couple rounds there that
And they also get to open up their offense to a different version of 3-point shooting that they have not really had because they've tried to do this for Tim Hardaway Jr. and only ever gotten it for 1 week at a time at best.
I think it was Najee who last year hit like 48% from the corner.
That's the biggest number they care about, right? Because that's where he's going to be.
And then the question there is, how do you do things where Boston can't just eliminate your corner threes?
You don't just worry about Boston, But
I mean, like that was the way to stop the Mavs last year was get rid of their.
But that's why Clay matters, right? Is because in previous iterations of the Mavericks, these beautiful plays, if they ever come out, have been ran for Tim Hardaway Jr.
My question is,
and
go ahead, C's.
I was going to say with mentioning Tim Hardaway Jr. and bringing in Clay, you're a set. I think maybe like myself included in this one, I think a lot of Mavs fans are going to see that as like you're replacing one for one, like all of Tim Hardaway's 4 minutes during like the regular season. That's going to go to Clay now, and so I mean Tim Hardaway was nothing on defense really a good chunk of the time. So is it possible to think that maybe it's not that big of a step back if you look at the second unit, if he's on the second unit?
Again, he's gonna that's the question, because they paid him so much. I can't imagine Clay's not starting, but I don't know how you run Luka, Clay, and Kyrie at the same time.
You're gonna run a four.
It's about guards. It's about guards. It's about the fact that I don't trust Luka or Kyrie to turn into an all defensive guard overnight. Well, no. Dante Exum's probably the best thing I've got.
Just pay Clay $50 million to not start.
Clay is not going to be a guard.
So they're going to play.
But he is a guard.
Clay is not going to be a guard anymore. If Clay is a Los Angeles Laker, he's not a guard either. He's a 3 and a 4 now.
A 4? At 6'5"?
Once you lose your ability to laterally move like he has, you are no longer going to be defensively.
I was going to say, I just think the ideal situation would be him just to be a sixth man, but he's not going to want to do that.
Some people think that's maybe why he didn't sign with the Lakers. I don't believe that, but yes, I think you could probably believe that that's a part of it. I mean, he was promised the Mavs starting role, and the Lakers didn't exactly have that leaked, but I don't think that's why he chose what he chose. I think he chose what he chose because I think two reasons, right? I think it's safer to feel like the Mavericks have a real thing built. Kid has been here for a little bit. He's established a Hall of Fame player. Luka's clearly one of the top 5 players in the NBA, could be the best player as soon as next year. Kyrie has had a great renaissance here.
And I think for me, I think that might be the narrative is the pitch from Kyrie versus the pitch from LeBron. And I bet Kyrie sounds more like you're talking to an actual human being, where LeBron's is a little.
But see, that's where we get into that. You're overlooking the obvious. You're looking for the fun ESPN narrative. We're looking at the reality. First of all, Klay Thompson is signed to Anta. He was the number 1 Anta guy when that came out. Whose biggest free agency shoe free agent since Wembanyama or before Wembanyama? It was Kyrie Irving, right? And who did Kyrie Irving go with? Anta. So boom, you already have the Chinese company working on their 2 biggest players ever now on the same team.
Yeah, then we already said it. Shoes and agents. So
they've both Kyrie and Clay are around the same age. Clay's a little older. They both played on many of USA basketball teams together, both in the lower ranks and with the big team.
Also, for Clay, I was gonna say is he can go to Dallas and there's nothing expected really for his whole legacy. All that if he goes to LA, he's playing with LeBron, his dad's ghost, all those other things.
He's not only a part of his dad's ex-team, he's a part of LeBron's team. He's a part of LeBron's team who just drafted LeBron's son. He's a part of LeBron's team who just drafted LeBron's son and just hired JJ Redick, who some people look at as a gimmick. Even if Clay likes it, everyone is going to look at JJ as a gimmick, and they're going to doubt the Lakers. And it is JJ and the Lakers' job to fix that. No one deserves to give them the benefit of the doubt. They have to prove to us that was the right decision, correct? So I think it's only fair for Clay to have looked at that uncertainty and moved on from it. I also think it's fair to say that if the Lakers make that move, that they hamstring themselves into being a more interesting version of what they are, but not necessarily put themselves in potential in the position they want to be in either.
Oh.
Because they would have had to move on from pieces in that roster to get Clay. The Mavericks were able to get rid of useless product essentially in order to bring in Clay. So I think all of those things mattered. An absolute metric shit ton. Sure, you can throw taxes in there if you want. I don't care. But ultimately, I think
the players' money people are smart enough to, although maybe because they're paid so high that actually does matter to them. But I think we overblow that as people who don't ever talk about things like effective tax rate and like how much you're actually paying beyond state income tax. Anyway, sorry.
And how many loopholes you can have to make it through those. That was my long of the Clay reason, because that's been a big debate.
Now back to like Clay fitting in with the Mavericks. I think my biggest concern, and I saw besides the injury history, my concern with him being in the starting lineup at the very least is you are looking at a lineup where you have a 6'1" guard, Luka's 6'6", 6'7", you have Clay at 6'5", and then you're gonna have PJ play the 4. He's at 6'7", and then you have a 7'1" guy. So you're really undersized on your first. Like
you're definitely putting a lot of pressure on Derek Lively to take another leap.
Yeah. And you could,
or maybe even Omax being an actual NBA player. Yeah, I mean those are two pretty big ifs.
Yeah, my big concern is you're essentially playing a small ball lineup. And sure, I mean the Mavs have had some success with it through various different stretches and iterations around Luka. But at the same time, it's like you saw what kind of happened against Boston. You got bullied because you were undersized at too many spots where they were maybe not necessarily, super big, but they were bigger than you in that particular instance.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
So that's my concern with him being in the starting lineup. Him coming off leading the second unit, I feel a little bit more comfortable, especially if you can get somebody like Dorian Finney-Smith back. Even though he's not necessarily the biggest guy himself, he's a strong guy.
Well, no, but it fills the issue. It fills the issue at hand because again, I like this roster. I'm looking at a lot of depth, but I'm also looking at optionality. Daniel Gafford is not necessarily a part of this group long term, if necessary. If something comes to play where they need to use that contract, they're not going to be held back from that. You're going to get stuck with what Quentin Grimes could end up being a really useful asset if you still choose to move him instead of re-sign him long term. Like I said, Kleba, you still have Kleba on the books for $11 million for the next 2 seasons. That's a tradable asset, but it's probably a negative tradable asset.
Everyone who's not Luka, Kyrie, or Clay or Lively,
but it's about
tradable.
money. But it's about money, right? That's the issue the Mavs need. It's not necessarily about quality of player because they have picks. It's about money. They need you basically right now, you don't have a lot of options because you want to see some of these guys play. So the best you can do is Kleba, Omax, and Jay Hardy put together for whatever piece that might get you. That's maybe one rotation player. And then is that enough to attach a first round pick for? Probably not. So that's the bitch of this roster, and that's where I do have some concern maybe the first year, but I still like marrying Clay for the 3 years left in this deal, potentially in his career. I think the money's low enough to where even if it doesn't quite work out the way you'd hope it would, that you're not going to be struggling from it. I think it's also important to know that, you're going to have to make a decision on Kyrie Irving again soon, right? So that's a big part of next year.
Didn't they extend him just recently?
But it was a 2-year deal because it was the other Kyrie, right? It was the Kyrie we don't know if we could trust yet. So Kyrie is a player option on next year's for 25-26, and that's a $44 million contract. Where if he plays another great season, maybe even gets an All-NBA team, he could be looking at somewhere in 50 to 60 a year. And Luka's about to be on the books for 70 at some point, right? And I know the cap's going up. I understand how this works. But ultimately, I think Clay staying at that contract is going to be nice. I mean, that's essentially the same contract you gave Tim Hardaway Jr. You know what I mean? That's got to feel good, is to have that. So, yeah, I know there's a lot of issues that can come from this. I think it's possible that this is a move that they don't recover from fast enough to repeat and go back to the NBA Finals. But this doesn't derail the Mavericks. If anything, I think this gets them closer to that final goal. Whether it takes them to the trade deadline, whether it takes them before the season even gets started to add another piece, we'll see. I think maybe the right logic is to just let this team play. Hopefully this team is good enough to maybe get your boy Luka into an MVP conversation, be a top something seed. Maybe you lose in the Western Conference Finals, and then it's time to push in the chips with Gafford. Combining Gafford and Kleber's money, putting Hardy in a deal, putting Omax in a deal, putting all the picks you can in a deal to land somebody that you think is really going to set you over the top. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, what you said, Patrick, to look at the way that Nico Harrison has remodeled this franchise very quickly is incredibly impressive and cannot be understated.
And it's funny because when he was hired, it was like, when he came from Nike.
I mean, we liked the hire, but it was definitely it was essentially what this JJ thing is with the Lakers in a way, where it's like, I love it on paper, but bro, this could go really badly. It hasn't.
And then the start of last year, there was the weird JaVale McGee Christian Wood thing where coach and GM are fighting each other over two guys who wouldn't last more than a couple months.
Yeah. So that's the thing. That's it on the Mavs. Do you guys have anything else? We're excited for the Mavs. They've done well. It's a fun free agency. They get to say they beat the Lakers in a free agent.
Except they didn't draft. You're talking about free agents. I was gonna say they didn't draft the closest thing to LeBron James they could have, though.
No, that was good. And in fact, they ended up trading up for somebody who might actually be a useful NBA player. So that could be bonus points down the road. We shall see.
Now, I'm just going to say, cautiously optimistic on this roster. We'll look forward to see what they do. Now, I know we're going to San Antonio Spurs. I just need to address my dogs that are barking, but you guys continue. I'll be right back.
Fair enough. Yes, we are moving.
Done before he gets back.
We are moving to the sassy Spurs. No, there's not as much to break down here, but there is some important moves. The question of whether or not they would try to force Wembanyama and the Wembanyama era to contention was always sort of Trae Young. You hear some of these sexy names where you're like, okay, yeah, they could in theory bring in these players, but why would they? Was essentially kind of the way that you were feeling about it. Like, why would you rush this? Why would you do the Kristaps Porzingis deal and set your franchise back potentially, right? San Antonio didn't do that, and then did that at the same time.
No, I think they got the right bridge, or Band-Aid. They bridged the gap pretty well, I think.
They did. They got lucky in a way, but they took advantage of it, and maybe they got the most surprising signing of the offseason. I still think Jonas Valanciunas going to Washington was very, very, very strange when I pulled the phone up on that one. But this was
I guess if we're talking about, sure. Are we talking about true hoop heads or casual fans? Because Joe Valanciunas isn't moving the needle for most non-real hoopers.
For me, it was just Valanciunas. I thought he would chase a ring. You know what I mean? Yeah. I thought he would be. That was it. And it was just like.
I just mean his name alone, if you're a casual, doesn't.
Hey, he might make the Hall of Fame though.
That's fine. He's just under the radar.
But that's more for contributions to Lithuania than anything.
Fair.
You draft Stephon Castle at 4. Cool.
Son of Tim Duncan's college teammate.
Something more people probably should have talked about because I felt like that was a tip. But essentially, this was such a Spurs-ass pick. You guys took a guard who could be the best defensive guard in basketball in a couple of years. He can't shoot at all, but that's fine. You kind of already have that.
Give it to Wemby.
You kind of need to in the
Give
NBA.
It to Wemby.
Yes. Essentially, that is the rule. Ultimately, you also need people to help keep Wemby from being constantly under blitzkrieg, and so that's a great option to have. You did trade the number 8 pick for very future picks, as we mentioned earlier. I was just very happy that Rob Dillingham wasn't a member of the Spurs. I mean, I was going to be fine with it to some extent because I thought it could maybe be fun for the interim, but it always felt like a player the Spurs were eventually going to have to move on from in this Wemby era unless he was really just fits into the six-man perfectly for him. But instead, they cashed in, and I thought that was a great move. Some people also believe that this happened after the Charlotte Hornets surprised everybody by taking the third French kid taken. I don't remember if Saloon is his last name. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. But there was some thought that the Spurs ended up trading out whenever that pick was made at 6 or 7. I forget. They
Six. Dijon, Salon.
Yeah. That's the kid they showed when they announced Dalton Connect. It was very funny. They don't look the same. You did draft and stash a player, the Spurs' favorite thing to do. Juan Nunez, a talented-looking guard, kind of in the model of a Ricky Rubio, Milos Teodosic. The only issue,
His name is Wanu.
Only issue with that, this guy can't shoot worth a fuck. And
you don't need to give it to him.
And again, that's not awesome in the modern NBA. Second of all, I'm going to go ahead and put the stereotype on. I didn't watch a lot of the tape, so I could be wrong, but didn't look like a guy that was going to be great on the defensive end. However, I loved the offensive highlights. So yes, if you brought him in as a rotational guard, especially with someone like Wemby, this dude looks like he's a pick and roll master. And of course, he's playing in a style of basketball that lends itself to that. So there is a nice little play with Nunez, but it is official. Nunez will stay with his club. I think he actually just signed up with a bigger club next year too. So
his overall efficiency in points per possession plus assists ranks in the 91st percentile among all international competition.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good as a table setter that the fact that he can't shoot or probably play defense basically wasn't that big a deal.
And then,
That's pretty good. That's
kind of
pretty
like we mentioned earlier, you want your comp to be a slightly bigger name. Nunez could generate production along the lines of prime Corey Joseph.
Yeah, I would take Corey Joseph's career in a heartbeat. That's pretty good salaries and at least one championship or 2 championship rings. No, 1 championship ring. He won the ring and then went to Toronto. He wasn't on the Toronto wing. Yeah, so it wasn't me.
What am I hearing?
What was that?
Who's coming in on this? I'm hearing it from y'all.
Yeah, I mean,
Hearing, what are you hearing?
I don't know, Caesar. Something's happening at your house. It's fine.
Oh, that must be the TV from the living room.
It's all good.
Okay.
Not a problem. No problem.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. So
wait. Are you hearing voices? Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, there's a little bit. That makes sense.
How's my mic catching that? Okay, one
It's all
second.
good. Don't worry about it. We're almost
no,
done
it's
here.
really not a big deal.
All right.
I can talk over it.
I just closed my door. That was it.
The most notable moves that were made here outside of the draft are both at the point guard position. Christopher Paul was his option date with the Golden State Warriors was pushed back. Golden State Warriors also allegedly turned down trading him to Chicago for a draft pick and Zach LaVine. Allegedly. I don't know how much I believe that, but that was rumored and reported. And ultimately, that does not come to fruition. Golden State ends up not guaranteeing his contract and waiving him because his contract was not guaranteed, even though it was worth like $30 million this year. And the Spurs get Chris Paul for 1 year, $11 million. So Chris Paul gets one last little payday too, most likely, on the way out the door. This also sort of lends him to stay with the Spurs if he wants to retire a Spur. It allows him to sort of revamp himself as a trade piece at a more tradable contract value
let's do it.
than he has been. Ultimately, if I'm Chris Paul, I probably would. If I'm being honest, I probably do stop ring chasing. Like, what's worse than stat padding? You might catch Stockton playing with Wemby for a couple more years.
I'm gonna say.
I'm just saying.
I was thinking more like he's trying to just get into more Hall of Fame acceptance speeches so that, long after all of his class is done, he can come back for Wemby's.
Well, look, I mean, I think Chris Paul to the Spurs makes a ton of sense. It always has.
It makes sense for the Spurs. I don't know why it makes sense for him because it's not like we unloaded the truck for him or anything.
What are you gonna do? Go to the fucking Lakers or Clippers?
Yeah, I mean that's why didn't he go to the Mavs?
No, yeah, the Mavs don't make sense for him.
Load
Because then
up.
you just have too many small guards
run,
or
run,
too many non-defensive guards at this point.
run Clay, Luca, Chris Paul, Kyrie at
Again,
the same time.
I kind of commend Chris for this. I think it also might potentially lend him to be a coach one day. Although Chris Paul, the coach, seems like a terrorist, even more so than the player.
I mean, is this his Avery Johnson move?
But I do really like this for Chris. I think that he can also elevate the.
I wouldn't hate having
Spurs.
Chris Paul as a coach.
I think Chris could also elevate himself or elevate the Spurs into being a play-in team this year or a playoff team, depending on how they finish this thing out.
I think they're going to be a really tough team to beat, but I don't think they're going to get up to the play-in yet. I don't think they can score enough.
If you get Chris healthy, though, I mean, that really adds an element of consistency that once they were even decently playing last year, they just didn't have.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's enough to put them in that category. And I mean, look, we've already seen a few Western Conference top 8 teams do some shit that's not very top 8 worthy for next season. So it's a little more open even in a competitive West.
I'm excited. I might even go to opening day again this year. I should probably see what the tickets look like. Probably a lot cheaper this year.
I think it's gonna be a great time. I mean, Chris Paul is such a perfect player to put with Wemby, man. He's gonna have so much fun with that. Devontae Graham was the other big note here. I know that's not the biggest household name in the world. His option was pushed back to the 8th of this month. The reason that is relevant to you folks is because that essentially means that they're most likely trying to work out some sort of trade package involving him. Could be just to dump him, could be to bring in a player they like and then them get rid of an asset. Could be that they just end up letting him walk for nothing. Not a player San Antonio clearly has much interest in. They sort of just took on his contract at some point, 4 picks, I believe, from New Orleans. So yeah, a very interesting set of circumstances still to play out for the San Antonio Spurs, who should still have some cap room to play with and probably a roster spot, I would think.
I feel like they can pretty much do whatever they want right now because they got cap space and players they can just.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some rumors about them being in on Lauri Markkanen. I don't know that, again, do you really want to rush it? But then you get Lauri for pretty cheap this year, and then you'd have to really, invest in him in the future. So, yeah, I mean, I like it. I just, I mean, I love the Chris Paul move a lot because I think it balances you out. But it does get a little goofy after that. Sochan needs to make a leap. He's playing nice for Poland right now, but that doesn't always translate like people hope that it does. Malachi Branham came on really strong last year. You hope that works out. If Bassey's healthy, then you get a really decent big man rotation this year where it was really sad outside of Victor last year. So, yeah, I mean, it's still largely the same team coming back at this moment with just a Chris Paul to set it up. So we will see how much that stays the same. But it is notable that the Spurs decided to at least semi make themselves more likely to make the playoffs. Let's put it that way.
I just think
without mortgaging the future.
I think it had everything to do with training, mentoring.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I mean, Chris is a very controversial man in a lot of ways. That's not one of them. He's definitely really good at this professional basketball thing, and there's a lot of people that could stand to learn from him. And Wembanyama's been a sponge. It's probably the best attribute that the kid has, which is saying something for as talented as he is. So again, it's a great fit there. The only problem we're gonna have now, Victor Wembanyama is not allowed to do the rip through. I'm sorry. That's the one thing that the refs have to be unfair about. Everyone can get the rip through, not that one, not that guy. Because what if he does the rip through, the defender could be like multiple feet away and still get hit. That's fucked up, man.
It's not his fault. He's the biggest man in the world.
No, Chris can't teach him that rip through, bro. No, that's bullshit. He can learn the Jamal Crawford moves. That's fair. That's fine. If he masters those, let Wemby have them.
All I need him to
He
really,
can't be playing the fucking
need
Chris
him to
Paul
do is master
shenanigans
the
game.
hook. Because once he masters the hook, he is the most unstoppable player of all time.
I don't think he will yet, but maybe that would be fun. Is eventually Wembanyama gets like stopped at some point.
45-foot wingspan, just throwing hooks from half court.
Hook shot is not as easy as you think. There's a reason that a lot of people have not tried it since.
I actually think it's more. Oh yeah, I've never. Yeah, with a defender for sure. But I'm just thinking. I think it's more natural motion than you would think it is, looking at it, because it's actually not too bad. But
Right, but it's also like the length is a weird thing to deal with, and like that's kind of why Kareem was special with it, is because he really mastered it with the length, because that's what was unstoppable. But Wilt couldn't do that.
Well, yeah, because Wilt held too much girth.
Wilt was too strong too. Wilt was a kind of a big, strong motherfucker. So that, you know what I mean? There wasn't enough finesse. Kareem always kept himself mostly slender. So it's just one of those things that, you know, maybe that lends itself to Victor. But
Victor did
Victor
dress
also
as Slenderman for Halloween, so
you're also talking about a player who doesn't necessarily need to go to a play like that, because he could do so many things that
No, that's
players
the
his
thing,
size
is
have never been able to
everything he adds to his game is unfair.
do. Yeah. So, well, hopefully the Spurs will stay shitty then for a little bit, huh? Is that the only chance the league has?
Yeah, you got a couple more years probably before it becomes what do we do with this, but
Then that's where we'll tease for next week, because French team has already played a couple games, or played a game today. They look very daunting. We already knew that was going to be a part of it, but obviously it's fun to watch now that it's on the court officially. And of course, they can look as dominant as they want, but history, dread it, run from it. History comes all the same. And it might be the last year we take the gold home for a long time. I goddamn promise you we're taking the gold home one last time before this fucking world catches up with us. I'm telling you that. Don't doubt Wardell Curry, okay? That man has one legacy thing left, and this is it.
losing to
you
the
can,
French.
You can defend that rim all you want, French. You better watch out.
It's gonna be
because
fun. I'm excited.
You're gonna be dealing with the first Olympic
Looks
Curry
like-
we've ever had.
Looks like Luka's just showing up to get them kicked out early.
Slovenia probably won't make it, yeah.
That's the best thing for the Mavericks. So
I would agree.
all right, I think this is technically our longest one yet. So I might.
Oops.
And we're all good. No, there was a lot. Like I said, there was so much happening in that NBA free agency that I was having trouble just looking at Twitter. There's just too much.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like I still cut like so much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. I think we did a good job.
All right.
Y'all look at the video I sent in the general chat. Of
I
our
saw it.
Discord.
That was
I saw
wild.
that live. Thought about talking to y'all about it, and then I was like, I'll just wait till I can get a video because it won't make any sense if I try to explain what I just saw. Everyone else, it'll be in the intro of this video, so you already saw it. All right.
Right.
Happy 4th of July. Go.
Y'all have a great
freedom,
night.
And I'll talk to y'all next week.
Merv.
Till next time. Murder.
This is Past the Rock.